What will you do when your money works for you? Welcome to the Tech Girl Financial Podcast with your hosts, Victor and Kim Gaxiola. From the home office in California, here is Victor and Kim.
Welcome back to the Tech Girl Financial Podcast. And today we are going to talk about one of the most common questions. What's that, Victor?
What do I do? I got this 401k. I used to work at an employer. It's still there, and I'm not exactly sure what to do about it. And that's probably one of the most common questions that we get, and is usually one of the reasons why we start working with people.
It certainly is one of those moments when you change jobs and you think, what is the best thing to do with this 401k now that I have with my old employer? And so a lot of times that's when we hear from people, is when they're moving jobs.
Yeah, and for most people, having a 401k is their first real entree into investing for retirement. I mean, most of the people become familiar with 401k when they get their first job or their second job, and they work in a large enough employer that actually offers a retirement planning savings vehicle, the 401k or 403b or 457, depending on your profession. But the bottom line is that most people aren't thinking about retirement when they're in their mid-20s, and starting in their first career job.
Right. But what we will say, for those of you listening, congratulations. I'm so impressed that you're listening if you're in your mid-20s. Get started.
Yeah.
Your retirement isn't something that you need to be worried about in your 40s and 50s. You need to start thinking about it in your 20s. You don't need to be worried about it. You just need to start contributing and increase slowly and surely. And your 401k is the greatest way to introduction to investments, introduction to saving, and growing your money for the future. So first thing you ought to know about your 401k plan is not whether you invest or not. It's how soon can you get invested? Because it's really important to start investing in these 401ks. If you are going to at all be transitioning from job to job, there's going to be a lot of periods where you can't invest in a 401k because you're in a 6-month enrollment period or what have you. So the first question is, it's not even a question, it's just start your investments in your 401k as soon as you possibly can.
Yeah, and I know for a lot of people, especially if you're in your mid-20s or early 30s, that thinking about retirement is still a prospect that's 30, 35, 40 years away maybe. And so you're not really thinking about it. But that's where you have the best thing going for you, is you have time.
Right.
Time to let this grow. Time to weather a number of different markets. And chances are, like most, you're not going to be at a job for 30, 40 years. The days of going and working for GE for your whole career or United Airlines, not happening anymore. As a matter of fact, statistically, research shows that the average American employee switches jobs. Do you want to take a guess how many times in a career?
6.
12 and a half.
Ooh, I was off.
12 and a half times, 12.3 to be exact, before retiring. So that's a lot of job changes.
It is.
Yeah.
And it again, it goes to that whole period of every time you change a job, usually you can't start in your 401k for 3 to 6 months. So when you're in and you're eligible, you need to be saving as much as you can. And this is a great entree into just the investing world in general.
Absolutely. And, as most of you know, if you've owned a 401k, 457, or 403b, did I get those right?
Yes.
Okay. If you have any one of those three, that the menu selection that you have available to you in investing in a 401k, whether it's with, XYZ company or so, is very limiting. It's very limiting. And to make it easy for people, they came up with these target funds. Right, target retirement funds. It says, I'll be 65 in 2036, or 2040 or 2050. I'll just put it there and set it and forget it. But as we get into this podcast a little bit later, you're going to realize that's not always the best thing.
It isn't. So if you're deciding between money market and a target date, definitely go with the target date fund. But if there are other opportunities within your investment option, it takes some discovery and learning to figure out what's the right thing for you.
Yeah, so Kim, today's podcast is built around a white paper that is available for download for free on our website. We'll make sure to include a link so that you can get this download from the show notes of the podcast. But the white paper is called Take Charge of Your 401k, just like the title of this podcast. And what we really want to break down, and we're going to spend a little bit of time giving you the options. So when people comes and says, what can I do? I've got this 401k. We're going to quickly go through two of the options, spend a little bit more time on the third option, and then we're going to kind of keep you away from the fourth option. So here we go, and this is all based on our experience. So the number one thing that someone can do is just to keep it at their own employer. But Kim, is that always the best idea?
Well, if you're going to have 12 different jobs, I don't recommend it. So, it's so funny. I'm amazed sometimes that people that I work with every now and then go, hey, I just found this money that I had in a retirement plan at this job I worked for 30 years ago. And so I think that that's the downfall of leaving it in your 401k. If you just have multiple 401ks, you might forget one.
Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, of the four options, this is probably the easiest because it's a do nothing. It's just leave it there. But you will find with people making these changes, and we've had a number of people have come to us, they've got like 3 or 4 different 401ks from 3 or 4 different employers, and they don't realize that they could really do themselves a service by bringing those monies together and then making a more concentrated plan. One statement, not 4 statements, one statement.
Right. And because, again, the other thing that we hear every now and then is that, I have it in all of these different retirement plans to be diversified. But that's just like buying milk at 4 different stores.
Well, the other thing is that if you had, if you keep your 401k previous employer, you probably can't take a loan from it anymore if you were looking at taking a loan just because you're no longer working there or contributing. And also some employers might actually charge higher fees if you're not an active employee. So some things to keep in mind.
And think about this. You move a lot during your lifetime as well. And so if you're moving and you don't remember to change your address with all of those different previous 401ks, you don't really want to go back to the old employer and tell them about that. Yeah. And so that's where you start losing track of these old plans.
That's right. Okay, so number 2, and this is something that you may consider, is taking your plan to your new job. So I work for, Apple. Now let's just say I move to Netflix and I like my Apple plan. Can I transfer my money over to Netflix? Yes, you can, but is it the right thing to do?
I don't know. I say that not because I really don't know, but because, it just depends on what's going on in your life. There are reasons to roll it over to your new plan if it's better than your old plan and you don't know what else to do with it. At least consolidate it so it's in one place. But that may not be the best option depending on what your goals are and what you have planned for your life. Well,
I think some of the considerations there is making sure that if you are moving it from one to the other, that, as you said, that the new plan has actually got great investment choices, probably better than the ones that you did have. And the other thing is, you got to see what potential fees are associated with the new plan to see if it makes sense.
Yes.
I mean, these are all things to think about, and sometimes there might be restrictions on being able to participate because of, as you said before, the enrollment period. So
right. And I'll give you a good rule of thumb on fees. A smaller plan with a smaller company probably has to charge higher fees than a larger organization because they're big and their purchasing power goes further. So their fees are probably going to be smaller.
Okay, so number 3, and this is, we're not going to make any secret of it. This is probably your preferred option, is to roll that 401k or 403b or 457 assets into an IRA or your own individual retirement account.
Yeah, and there are a lot more retirement plans besides what Victor is saying. There's simple IRAs, SEPs, and all sorts of things. Simple IRAs actually are more in line with the smaller businesses. So let's just use the word retirement plan.
Okay, let's do it. I didn't want to leave anybody out.
I know. And retirement plan pretty much covers it all.
Okay.
So yeah, what should you do here? Rolling it over to an IRA, your 401k is going to be more like going to a restaurant and having a limited menu of of options. Some restaurants are like Taco Bell and some restaurants are like Cheesecake Factory. However, when you roll it over to an IRA, it's more like going to Safeway or Costco.
Right. Okay.
And you get what you want personalized to you, period.
So
you
not
have nuts allergies. You're
Right.
not going to make nuts in your meal.
So you're going from a set menu to you can make whatever you want.
Right.
Mm.
And it's completely customized on you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it may get overwhelming to some because they think, yeah, but this little menu is good. I like takeout. But it's always really important to think about, what do you have in your long-term plans and seek help. Talk to a professional because there are some things that you can do with your 401k, but you need to do them before you roll it over to an IRA. So I think one thing that's really important to remember before doing what maybe I like to do, which is impulsively move something or make a split decision and then go with it, is to really think about all the options and seek help.
Yeah.
Because sometimes if you do that impulsive move, like when you're on the phone with your 401k provider and they say, hey, you can roll this into an IRA at Fidelity and let's go to it right now. And you just do it with a representative from the plan sponsor and not necessarily a experienced advisor. By making that change all of a sudden on the phone, it may limit your options to what you can do with that plan in the future.
Yeah, and it's that 800 number. It's not a personalized relationship and such. So obviously, this is exactly why we strongly recommend moving it into an IRA, which will give you not only more options from an investment selection setup, but also a lot more control. And I think that this is really where we get a lot of people who come and they initiate a relationship with us because they need assistance with that rollover. They want to establish this individual retirement account, and they want to be smarter about where they invest their money. And that's one of the points that I make when I talk to people, especially if they've moved jobs a lot of times and they have multiple 401ks out there, that if they consolidate it, they might actually be in a situation where the balances or the consolidated balances, once you bring it all together in a single account, might reach certain thresholds where certain investment options, which weren't available to them even before in the 401k, even if they were starting off with a brand new IRA, with a lower balance, now consolidating it, they might actually put themselves in a situation where there are different investment options for them that make more sense.
That's true. So one thing you have to think about are the investment options. And then the other thing to think about are the actual strategic planning things. And what I mean by this is if you are even remotely considering converting some of that money from a traditional 401k or IRA to a Roth account, if you pull the trigger too fast on something, then you may not have that ability to do, or you may have to do a lot more than you really wanted to do. So this is all a weird way of saying just get help on your long-term goals first and know where you're going with those investments before making any changes.
And one last point on this, Kim, which I think is extremely important, is sometimes people are surprised when they do put their monies and consolidate it into an IRA that they can own more than just mutual funds, because most 401k programs are mutual funds. They're surprised. You mean I can actually own stocks? I can actually own exchange traded funds,
Right.
So we talk about the variety of investment options, and it's beyond just mutual funds.
Mm-hmm. And that goes back to the whole idea that a lot of times what we're seeing a lot of these days are more target date funds in their 401ks. And like I said, I like this option way better than a money market fund if you just don't make a decision. But when you dive down deeply into those target dates and what is in them, it's not always the best scenario. And if you can work with an advisor and they can put together a stock portfolio, you might even be more engaged in the whole process. And when the market turns down, because at some point it does, I like my clients to know what they own.
Yeah.
And when you're holding stocks, you can figure out a lot about those companies.
So that's the third option, which should be no secret is our preferred option. The fourth option, which is only in extreme cases would we probably recommend this, and that's cashing out. That's just liquidate it. And obviously there are some tax consequences. What would be those tax consequences and possible penalties if you were to do that?
So cashing out provides a plethora of tax consequences. If you are under 59 and a half and still working, it's the 10% penalty. There are some exceptions to that, like if you're a first-time home buyer, or I believe it's disability and certain other little caveats that can be looked up in the IRS code. But along with the 10% penalty that typically is charged on that money, then it is also subject to regular income taxes. And so you pull out, you cash out $50,000. $50,000 is added to your regular income from your job. And come April, if you haven't done any estimates, you may owe a lot of taxes. And one thing that 401ks love to do is if you're going to cash out, it's mandatory for them to pull 20% federal taxes, and some states are mandatory state additional tax to pull out, and some are optional. Now, when you do that, you actually are double taxed to a certain degree, and this is where people don't really realize what's happening to them. And sometimes it's better to roll it into an IRA to cash out because you could get taxed less. So this is where I say it's a little bit tricky, but if you're taking out $50,000 from your 401k and $10,000 of that goes to the federal government, you're still charged income of $50,000, even though you only received $40,000 and $10,000 went to the government. And the whole $50,000 is subject to a penalty, not the $40,000. And so if it were me and I had to take money out, and there was a time where I did need to take money out of my 401k, I would prefer to move that money into an IRA and pay the taxes after. Only take out what I need and pay the taxes out of my pocket, because everything that you pay from that is taxed twice.
Good point. So that is the fourth option. Obviously not the best option, but in some circumstances may be the case. I think the important point here is if you want to take charge of your 401k or your retirement programs, it helps to talk to someone. And that's what we're here for. Like I said, it's what initiates a lot of the relationships with clients that we've had now for many, many years. Started with a conversation around how do we best manage, this retirement assets that we've had, and now we want to consolidate it. Now we want to really regain some more control over it in an IRA or some other type of retirement account outside of their previous employer's plan. Now, again, all these 4 tips were part of a Take Charge of Your 401k white paper, which is available on our website and also in the show notes. And if you're interested in talking to us about your own situation, should you have a lot of 401ks lying around, you're receiving statements from employers that you don't even remember, talk to us. Just contact us. Again, the show notes will have an easy link for you to set up some time to have a conversation. So to briefly recap and possibly go through some pros and cons of each of the different choices that you have that are outlined in the white paper. The first one that we talked about was staying put. And obviously that one's easy. That's the pro. You don't have to do anything. But on a con side, you can't have a loan provision anymore. And also, you might run the risk of higher fees if you're no longer employed by the company that is administering the 401k. Number 2 is to move to the new plan. So you're in a new job, and you can transfer those funds over to your new plan. The pro on that is that you can consolidate. You simplify your life by receiving one single statement, and you don't lose track of your account. The con on that is that you may not have as many investment option choices. Could be the same or less than you had before. And there might be a waiting period when it comes to enrollment. Option 3 is to roll it over into an IRA. This will expand your investment choices and give you some consolidation and also more control. The con on that it could create a taxable event if you are not doing it correctly. If you don't do the rollover correctly or within specific time frames, it could be a taxable event. So talk to your advisor to make sure that you do that one right. And then the fourth option is cashing out. Now, whereas that on the pro side means that you get access to your money and it gets liquidated, there is nothing to move or nothing to administer. The con on this is that your employer will likely hold 20% withholding and will be taxed as income. And if you're under the age of 59 and a half, could potentially get a penalty for early withdrawal. So obviously all the four choices have their pros and they have their cons. And as we've been saying all along, make sure that you talk to your financial professional to ensure that you're making the right choice for you, given your options.
That's right. We're always here for you.
So once again, this is the Tech Girl Financial Podcast. Just wanted to share with you. We will be doing some additional podcasts on other concepts. And so we hope that you'll tune in then. And as always, if you have any questions, just reach out to us at techgirlfinancial.com. Or you can also find us on social media. We give you all the particulars. We're on the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the Twitters and the LinkedIns and the YouTubes and everything else.
Right. And just remember, what will you do when your money works for you?
That's right, Kim. Great way to sign us off. So we'll talk to you next time. Thank you for joining us once again.
If you have questions, comments, or suggestions for future shows, please send an email to Victor at techgirlfinancial.com or join the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag AskTGF. We also encourage you to follow us on the Tech Girl Financial page on Facebook and connect with us on LinkedIn.
Please be sure to speak to your financial professional to carefully consider the differences between your company retirement account and investment in an IRA. These factors include, but are not limited to, changes to availability of funds, withdrawals, fund expenses, and fees. Securities offered through registered representatives of Cambridge Investment Research, Inc., a broker-dealer member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Cambridge Investment Research Advisors, a registered investment advisor. Tech Girl Financial and Cambridge Investment Research, Inc. are not affiliated companies. Discussions in this show should not be construed as specific recommendations or investment advice. Always consult with your investment professional before making important investment decisions.